Jessica here once again. Welcome back to GED On Language Arts. I'll be leading you through Chapter 4. If at any time you feel like you need to pause the video, please feel free to do so. You can always return back to where you last left off in the video. This program was designed to follow along with the book. Therefore, if you're ready to begin with Chapter 4, let's get started. Hope you can stay focused. As a reminder, we'll be using the Kaplan GED Test Prep Plus 2020 book for this and all videos offered through the GED On platform. You can find links below to purchase the book at your local store or online. We'll be starting our fourth video by covering Unit 1, Reasoning Through Language Arts, Chapter 4, Interpreting Fiction. Chapter 4 will be covering lessons 1 through 6, starting on page 116 of the Kaplan book. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's begin Lesson 1, Simple Sentences. A complete simple sentence has at least one subject and one verb. The subject is the person, place, or thing that the sentence is talking about. The verb is the word that tells what action the subject is doing or links the subject to a modifier. An example of an action verb would be the following sentence. Mary took notes on the lecture. The subject in the sentence is Mary, and the verb is the word took. Another example would be of a linking verb. The following sentence for the example is, they were long. The subject for the sentence is they, the verb is were, and the modifier is long. If a sentence is missing either the subject or the verb, it is called a fragment. A fragment is an incomplete sentence. An example of a sentence with no subject would be, typed up her notes. An example of a complete sentence would be, Mary typed up her notes, Mary being the subject. An example of a sentence with no verb would be, the computer in the library. A complete sentence would be, the computer in the library crashed several times. Crashed is the verb in the sentence. If a sentence doesn't express a complete thought, you may need to add a subject, verb, or other words. An example of an incomplete thought would be the following sentence. When she lost her work. What happened when she lost her work? A complete thought for this example would be, Mary was very frustrated when she lost her work. A sentence must have correct end punctuation in order for it to be complete. Therefore, let's review the following examples below. Our first example is for a statement sentence. As it says, Mary has lost numerous files this way. For statement sentences, you must end your sentence with a period at the end of it. Our next example is for command sentences. As it says here, turn off the computer, period. You must also end your sentences that are command sentences with a period at the end. For a sentence that's a question, such as, will the computer ever be fixed? You must add a question mark at the end of the sentence. Lastly, sentences that are exclamation, such as, what a mess I'm in, you need to have an exclamation point at the end of it. If you find a fragment in your writing, you must rewrite it to make it a complete sentence. Now that we've covered simple sentences with examples, let's move on to practice 1, found on page 117. Before you start on practice 1, I would advise that you have a pen or pencil and a sheet of paper next to you so you can answer the following 3 questions. Our first question says, drives his girlfriend crazy. Is this sentence a complete sentence or a fragment? Please write C if this sentence is complete or F if the sentence is a fragment. Rewrite any fragments to make them complete. If you wrote F for this question, you're correct. This sentence is a fragment and you would rewrite the sentence as, it drives his girlfriend crazy. Our second question says, as soon as he comes home from work. Is this sentence a complete sentence or a fragment? Please write C if the sentence is complete or F if the sentence is a fragment. Rewrite any fragments to make them complete. If you wrote F for this question, you are correct. This sentence is a fragment and you would rewrite the sentence as soon as he comes home from work, comma, he starts talking on the telephone. Our third question says, he calls everyone he knows. Is this sentence a complete sentence or a fragment? If you wrote C, the sentence is complete, you are correct. The following sentence is a complete sentence and not a fragment. You may now pause the video and complete questions 4 through 7. Click play when you're ready to continue. Welcome back. We're now moving on to Lesson 2, Compound and Complex Sentences. The simple sentences that we covered in Lesson 1 are also called independent clause. An independent clause has a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. You can join 2 independent clauses into one compound sentence. To make a compound sentence, you should choose a logical coordinating conjunction to join the independent clauses. Coordinating conjunctions are the words and, but, or, nor, for, so, and yet. You should also insert a comma before the coordinating conjunction. The following examples below that we'll be reviewing are a sentence that has 2 independent clauses, a sentence that has no coordinating conjunction, and a sentence that has no comma. Let's go ahead and review our first example. The sentence that we have is a sentence that has 2 independent clauses. It says, Sam saw a design flaw, period. He wrote a memo, period. Joined correctly in making it into a compound sentence, you will rewrite this sentence as, Sam saw a design flaw, comma, so he wrote a memo. Our next example is a sentence that has no coordinating conjunction. As it says, Sam asked his boss, comma, she told him to send it, period. The correct way you would write the sentence is, Sam asked his boss, comma, and she told him to send it. Lastly, our sentence that has no comma says, Sam's boss was busy, so she asked Sam to write the memo, period. The correct way you will write this sentence is Sam's boss was busy, comma, so she asked Sam to write the memo. Below, you'll see a table that shows the coordinate conjunction and the correct relationship between ideas for two independent clauses. As you can see in our table, we have two columns. One on the left says relationship between ideas, and on the right, the column says coordinate conjunction. So for the first row, for relationship between ideas, it says join two equally important ideas. The coordinate conjunction for this would be the word and. In the second row, for relation between ideas, it says contrast two ideas. The coordinate conjunction for this would be the words but and yet. In the third row, for relation between ideas, show a cause. The coordinate conjunction for this would be the word for. For the fourth row, for relationship between ideas, it says show an effect. The coordinate conjunction for this would be the word so. For the fifth row, for relationship between ideas, it says give a choice. And the coordinate conjunction for this would be using the word or. For the sixth row, for relation between ideas, it says give no choice. The coordinate conjunction for this would be the word nor. An example of a correct conjunction would be John showed initiative, comma, and his boss praised him. Now that we've gone over compound sentences with some examples, let's move on to practice 2.1, found on page 119. For these next three questions, please make sure that you use the list on page 118 and choose a coordinating conjunction for each sentence. Rewrite the sentence using the conjunction preceded by a comma. Our first question says, it was late, blank. I was walking home from work. What coordinating conjunction would you use? The correct way you would rewrite this sentence is, it was late, comma, and I was walking home from work, period. The second sentence says, my coworker, comma, Judy, comma, had offered to drive me, blank, I had refused. What coordinating conjunction would you use for the sentence? The correct way you would rewrite this sentence is, my coworker, comma, Judy, comma, had offered to drive me, comma, but I had refused, period. Our third question says, it was a warm night, blank. I decided to get some fresh air. What coordinating conjunction would you use for the sentence? The correct way you would write the sentence is, it was a warm night, comma, so I decided to get some fresh air, period. You may now pause the video and complete questions 4 through 8. Click play when you're ready to continue. Now that we've finished learning about compound sentences, let's move along to complex sentences. Complex sentences is made up of an independent clause and a subordinate clause. A subordinate clause has a subject and verb, but it does not express a complete thought. The following examples below that we'll be reviewing are of one that's a subordinate clause and another that's a complex sentence. Let's review them below. The subordinate clause says, because their pay was too low. How you would write this sentence as a complex one would be, teachers went on strike because their pay was too low. The independent clause in this sentence is teachers went on strike. The subordinate clause is because their pay was too low. Every subordinate clause begins with a subordinate conjunction that shows the relationship between the subordinate clause and the independent clause. Below is a table showing a list of common subordinate conjunctions. As you can see in the table, on the left column, it says relationship between clauses, and on the right, it says subordinate conjunction. In the first row, for relationship between clauses, it says cause/reason. The subordinate conjunction for this would be the word because. In the second row, the relation between clauses, it says effect/result. The subordinate conjunction for this would be in order that or so that. In the third row, for relationship between clauses, it says time. The subordinate conjunction for this would be the words after, as, before, once, since, until, when, whenever, and while. In the fourth row, for relationship between clauses, it says place. And the subordinate conjunction for this would be the words where and whatever. In the fifth row, for relationship between clauses, it says choice. And the subordinate conjunction for this would be the words if and whether. In the sixth row, for relationship between clauses, it says contradiction. And the subordinate conjunction for this would be the words although, even though, through. Remember, when a subordinate clause comes at the beginning of a sentence, put a comma after it. If a subordinate clause comes at the end of a sentence, you don't need a comma before it. However, when a subordinate clause at the end of a sentence begins with the words although, though, or even though, put a comma before the clause. Now that we have reviewed complex sentences with a few examples, let's move on to practice 2.2 found on page 121. Before you start on practice 2.2, I would advise that you have a pen or pencil and a sheet of paper next to you so that you can answer the following two questions. The first question says, most fatal fires occur, period, parentheses, when a family is asleep, period. How would you rewrite this sentence to form a complex sentence? The correct way you would write this sentence is, most fatal fires occur when a family is asleep. The second sentence says, parentheses, because a smoke alarm wakes you up, period, it can allow you to escape, period. How would you rewrite this sentence to form a complex sentence? The correct way you would write this sentence is, because a smoke alarm wakes you up, comma, it can allow you to escape, period. You may now pause the video and complete questions 3 through 7. Click play when you're ready to continue. We are now moving on to lesson 3, run-ons and comma splices. There are two errors that people generally make when they write. The first type of error is called a run-on. A run-on sentence is two or more sentences that are connected without correct punctuation. An example of a run-on sentence would be, banks offer many helpful services, you should check them out. There are a number of ways to correct a run-on sentence. The first way would be to break the run-on into two separate sentences. As shown here, the example is now separated into two sentences. As it states, banks offer many services, period. You should check them out, period. A second way to correct a run-on sentence would be to make it into a compound sentence. That is adding a coordinated conjunction and a comma. The example now states, banks offer many services, comma, so you should check them out, period. A third way to correct a run-on sentence would be to make it into a complex sentence. That is adding a subordinate conjunction and, if necessary, a comma. The way you'd write the example now would be, because banks offer many services, comma, you should check them out, period. A run-on can also consist of independent clauses strung together with the word and. To correct this kind of run-on, you need to divide it into one or more compound sentences or by combining ideas into one sentence. An example of a run-on with the word and would be, Friday I got paid and I went to the bank and cashed my check. A way we could correct this run-on sentence would be having written as Friday I got paid, comma, went to the bank, comma, and cashed my check, period. Now that we talked about run-on sentences, let's move ahead with comma splices. The second type of error that people make when they write is called a comma splice. A comma splice is two sentences that are joined with only a comma. To correct a comma splice, add a coordinating conjunction after the comma. An example of a comma splice would be, you can check on your account using bank by phone services, comma. It's even possible to do your banking on the internet, period. A correct way you write the example would be, you can check on your account using bank by phone services, comma, and it's even possible to do your banking on the internet, period. Also be aware that you can correct a comma splice using the methods described previously for correcting a run-on. Additionally, you can also join two related ideas with a semicolon. Another example of a comma splice would be, there are fewer bank tellers today, comma. Banks do offer other services, period. A way you could correct this example is by creating a complex sentence, stating, although there are fewer bank tellers today, comma, banks do offer other services, period. Now that we learned more about run-ons and comma splices, let's view practice 3 found on page 123. Before you start on practice 3, I would advise that you have a pen or pencil and a sheet of paper next to you so you can answer the following two questions. Our first question states, Jeff just got his driver's license, comma, he's very excited, period. Please write down how you'd correct this sentence using the methods explained on page 122. There are actually several correct answers for this question. One of the ways that you can correctly rewrite this sentence using the methods on page 122 is by writing, Jeff just got his driver's license, comma, and he's very excited, period. You can find more answers for this question on page 652 of your book. Our second question states, he bought a car that has a lot of miles on it. It wasn't very expensive, period. Please write down how you'd correct this sentence using the methods explained on page 122. Once again, there are several correct answers for this question. One of the ways you can correctly rewrite this sentence using the methods on page 122 is by writing, he bought a car that has a lot of miles on it, comma, so it wasn't very expensive, period. You can find more answers for this question on page 652 of your book. You may now pause the video and complete questions 3 to 7. Click play when you're ready to continue. We're now going to move on to Lesson 4, Subordinate Ideas. Writing is more effective when it flows smoothly. For this reason, it is important that you write using smooth flowing sentences rather than short, choppy sentences. You can do this by using subordination in a variety of ways. It can be by forming a complex sentence with a subordinating clause, or by compound sentences. Let's now view some examples of how we can write using smooth flowing sentences rather than short, choppy sentences. Our first example is a short and choppy sentence, as it says, Carla ran for the bus, period, she missed it, period. A way that we can fix this sentence is by writing it as a complex sentence. As it says, although Carla ran for the bus, comma, she missed it, period. Another way that we could fix this sentence is by writing it as a compound sentence. As it states, Carla ran for the bus, comma, but she missed it, period. If two sentences have the same subject, you can combine them to form one sentence with a compound predicate. The predicate includes the verb plus anything else that is not part of the subject. For example, a short, choppy, and repetitive sentence would say, Carla sat on the bench, period. She looked at her watch, period. This sentence rewritten with a compound subject would actually say, Carla sat on the bench and looked at her watch, period. Similarly, when two sentences have the same predicate, you can combine them to form one sentence with a compound subject. For example, another short, choppy, and repetitive sentence would say, Carla missed the bus, period. Dave missed the bus, comma, too, period. This sentence written with a compound subject would say, Carla and Dave missed the bus, period. Lastly, several short sentences that are related can be combined into one longer and more detailed sentence. For example, once again, we have a short and choppy sentence that says, Carla missed the bus, period. It was a 7:45 bus, period. She was on her way to work, period. This sentence rewritten with more detail would say, Carla missed the 7:45 bus on her way to work, period. Now that we covered subordinate ideas, let's move along to practice 4, found on page 125. Before you start on practice 4, I would advise that you have a pen or pencil and a sheet of paper next to you so that you can answer the following two questions. The first sentence states, tornadoes can cause a lot of damage. Earthquakes are also capable of causing a lot of damage. How would you rewrite this sentence? The correct way you would rewrite this sentence is, tornadoes and earthquakes can cause a lot of damage. The second question states, earthquakes are somewhat common in California. Many Californians do not seem to mind. How would you rewrite this sentence? The correct way you would rewrite this sentence is, earthquakes are somewhat common in California, comma, but many Californians do not seem to mind, period. You may now pause the video and complete questions 3 to 7. Click play when you're ready to continue. We are now continuing to Lesson 5, Modify Ideas. Modifiers are words and phrases used to add descriptive details. An example of a modifier might be words like sweaty or freezing. Modifiers make writing clear, more specific, and more interesting. The following examples below will show a sentence with modifiers and without one. Our first example is a sentence without modifiers. It says, our friends Jack and Tina helped us while we were moving. This sentence with modifiers would say, our good friends Jack and Tina helped us while we were moving, comma, watching our baby in their home, period. A dangling modifier is a word or phrase at the beginning of the sentence that has no clear subject to describe. Examples of a dangling modifier would be driving the truck, one of the boxes fell out. Who was driving the truck? One of the boxes? The correct way you would write this sentence would be, as we were driving the truck, comma, one of the boxes fell out. Or it could be written as driving the truck, comma, we heard one of the boxes fall out. A misplaced modifier is poorly placed in the sentence. It is not clear which word it modifies, or it modifies the wrong word in the sentence. An example of a misplaced modifier would be, the moving van was just large enough that we rented. The correct way you would write this sentence would be, the moving van that we rented was just large enough. Now that we've gone through modify ideas, let's do practice 5 found on page 127. Before you start on practice 5, I would advise that you have a pen or pencil and a sheet of paper next to you so you can answer the following 2 questions. Our first question states, Trent's sister encouraged him to become a nurse, comma, who's a health professional, period. How would you rewrite this sentence? There are several correct answers for this question. One of the ways you can correctly rewrite this sentence would be writing, Trent's sister, comma, who's a health professional, comma, encouraged him to become a nurse, period. Our second question states, waking up the patients to take their blood pressure, comma, they get rather annoyed, period. How would you rewrite this sentence? There are several correct answers for this question. One of the ways that you can correctly rewrite this sentence is by writing, when he wakes up the patients to take their blood pressure, comma, they get rather annoyed, period. You may now pause the video and complete questions 3 to 7. Click play when you're ready to continue. Let's move on to lesson 6, parallel structure. When you write a sentence that lists 2 or more words, phrases, or clauses, the elements in the list must be in the same grammatical form. This means that the sentence must have parallel structure. The following examples below will have sentences that are parallel and not parallel. Our first example is a sentence that's not parallel, as it states, Jim wants to eat less, comma, exercise more, comma, and be getting more sleep, period. A way you can write this sentence as a parallel one would be Jim wants to eat less, comma, exercise more, comma, and get more sleep, period. If you want to be sure that your sentences have parallel structure, you must have the following. The first is to make sure that verbs in a list are in the same form and tense. An example of this would be the following sentence that's not parallel, saying Jim went to the store, comma, bought an exercise mat, comma, and is doing exercises, period. This sentence parallel would be Jim went to the store, comma, bought an exercise mat, comma, and did exercises, period. The second, to make sure that your sentences have parallel structure, would be to be sure that phrases in a list are parallel in form and wording. Our example would be the following sentence that's not parallel. Avoid exercising on busy streets, comma, near traffic jams, comma, and polluted areas, period. this sentence parallel would be avoid exercising on busy streets, comma, near traffic jams, comma, and in polluted areas, period. The third way to be sure that your sentences have parallel structure is for each list must have single words, short phrases, or clauses. An example of a sentence that's not parallel would be the most effective fitness programs are low impact, comma, informal, comma, and you can do them at home, period. The way you'd write the sentence parallel would be the most effective fitness programs are low impact, comma, informal, comma, and home-based, period. Finally, a way to be sure your sentences have parallel structure is to notice that a comma separates each item within a list of 3 or more. For example, low impact, comma, informal, comma, and home-based. Now that we have covered parallel structure, let's go ahead with practice 6 found on page 129. The first question states, Jenna has worked in a factory, comma, a store, comma, and has a waitress, period. Please write down how you would rewrite this sentence to make the structure parallel. There are several correct answers for this question. One of the ways that you can correctly rewrite this sentence is, Jenna has worked in a factory, comma, a store, comma, and a restaurant, period. The second question states, she would like putting her kids in a better school and to get a better job. How would you rewrite this sentence to make the structure parallel? There are several correct answers for this question. One of the ways that you can correctly rewrite this sentence is, she would like to put her kids in a better school and to get a better job, period. We now pause the video and complete questions 3 to 7. Click play when you're ready to continue. Wonderful job, everyone. You've completed Chapter 4. Now that Chapter 4 has been completed, don't stop here. You need to keep on going to the next chapter. The next video will cover Unit 1, Reasoning Through Language Arts, Chapter 5, Connecting Ideas. See you in Chapter 5.